The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, published 1845. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this, and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow. Sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor, entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obstince made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird, beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore, "Thou thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghostly grim, and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled, this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast, and followed faster, till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven, still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy onto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghostly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking Nevermore. This I sat engaging in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed with an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, respite, and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Aidenn, it shall clasp a sainted maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked, upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's plutonium shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. The Raven has long been one of Edgar Allan Poe's most recognized works, and has also become associated as his signature piece in the literary world. At the time of its publication in 1845, The Raven was a sensation, a brilliant masterpiece that continues to capture world admiration and in-depth inquiry today. Through Poe's own words, the poem provides more than a tale, but an in-depth study of the human condition, one that speaks volumes of the struggle to move forward in overcoming unspeakable loss and the madness that can arise. When analyzing a literary piece, I use a technique I call SOAPs, a process that allows me to identify the speaker, though unnamed in the poem, but is likely set from the perspective of Poe himself, considering his own tragic experiences in suffering loss. The occasion of the poem is written to tell the story following the death of a loved one, whom we know is Lenore. For the targeted audience, I believe there are two. Firstly, we have to remember that the Raven is written at a level which only mature readers are often able to comprehend. This is often the result of readers of today having a lack of exposure to classical works in old literature that we see referenced to historically and symbolically throughout the poem, while often lacking a familiarity of the language as well. Another targeted audience are those who also understand great loss, whom Poe is capable of connecting to, a way that can help process his grief. Which leads us to the purpose, understanding the struggle of moving on with life after the passing of Lenore. The subject of this poem is the journey into madness, the lack of rationality over oneself after the realization that the narrator will never forget his pain, and this is haunted by the memory their suffering stems from. Now, I mentioned earlier, the poem makes several references to several classical examples of Greek mythology and Homer's Odyssey. Now, why? Well, for one, the reference of the bust of Pallas is actually a reference to the sculpture of Pallas Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom. Therefore, when the raven is repeatedly mentioned as standing on this bust of the goddess, it symbolizes the narrator's lack of rationality and ability to master himself when dealt with his tragedy, as symbolized by the raven. The narrator's pain and his belief of his inability to continue due to the hurt then has him demanding a way to banish the very memory of Lenore from his being. This is a reference to Nepenthe, a drug from the Odyssey that induces forgetfulness. The mindset behind this connection stems from the belief that the narrator's grief would be less painful than had he never known Lenore at all. But this leads us to the undeniable truth within the poem's message. What Poe is trying to get across to his readers is, you will never forget, but there remains a choice. You can continue with life and keep your love's memory alive, or allow the grief and pain to consume you, forever haunted as we see the fate of the narrator in the poem, and incapable of recognizing life from your inner darkness. If you enjoyed this podcast, please click the like icon and subscribe for more episodes. Until next time, my fellow readers, nevermore.